We're now on Daf Yud Tesamid Beis, Batsorsa. This is only about Sores because we can bring water from the nearby city. It's a lower level Tzara. And therefore, Ein Masriyan al Kaf. We don't start Hasra and add to our Tfilos, etc. Blow the shofar. Midinta Madina, but if you would have to take water, if you would have to import grains from another country, then kafna, that's considered a famine. And you begin with hasra. So if you can just cross the river and in a nearby city you can import grains, that's not considered a famine. But if you have to go to another country, that's called a famine. Omar Rav Chanina, again, we try to figure out the difference between Batsores, which is not Masriyan, and Ra'av, which is a famine. And now we have a dearth of grains out in the marketplace. That's how bad the drought is. And Sa'ah Bisela, instead of bringing in 4 Sa'im, 1 seller, you only could buy 1 Sa. That's an inflation of 400%. But Ushchicha, even though you'll have to pay 4 times the amount of the price, but nevertheless, you'll spend the money, and the money is available, and the grains are available out there in the marketplace. But Sarta, but Sarta is the end in the sense, meaning it's not Masriyan because he has the money and he'll pay 4 times the price, but the grains are available in the marketplace. That's only a Batsoros. However, Arba Sa'in Bisela, which is the normal price, the going price when things are healthy and well, there's plenty of rain, it still might be considered a Ra'av. Why? Because Lo Shchicha, Kanfa. Lo Shchicha means there are no grains to be found in the marketplace. Again, if there were grains, you can get it at regular standard price. But what good does that do you if there's no grains in the market? That's Ra'av. And therefore, Masriyan al Kaf. Now, Rabbi Yochanan introduces another element to the equation, and that is when inflation was so intense that there's no money to be had. Rabbi Yochanan lo shanu. When are you going to tell me that, well, there's plenty, there's an ample amount of chitim in the market? That's not Ra'av, that's only Batsores. That's Bizman Shemos Bizol, when there's money to be had. And people are actually carrying money in their pockets. And there's Masuman going on. People are buying and selling. They're making profits. The payros biyoker. Okay, they're spending 400% of its normal price, but they have money to spend on it. Avol mos biyoker. If, on the other hand, there's no money available, this is a terrible situation. And Paris Bizol, they're offering you slash prices to buy fruits, but you don't have any money in your pocket. There's no masumatin going on. It's ein hamos mituyos. When the money is scarce, even if food is inexpensive, the situation is dire. Masriyan oleh miyad. It's a famine, and we cry out immediately, like all other tzaros. Even though there's fruit to be bought and it's cheap, but there's no money to spend. This is a makas ra'av. Yom Rabbi Yochanan, Nehirna, I remember from my youth, kad havukaime, when the price in the market of chita was arba soyin besela, which is the going rate, the normal price, that you had 4 soyin with 1 seller, and there were people who were suffering from undernourishment, from famine. Their bellies were blown up. The Tveria, the city of Tveria, be the less Isar, because there were no monies to use to buy the chitin. The Mishnah says, Yardu litzmachim. What if enough rains fell for the crops? Avolo le'ilon. In order for the trees to produce fruit, you need more hard rain. Or the opposite. Let's say the rains fell for the tzmachim, but there wasn't enough, or there was enough. There was very hard rain coming down for the Elon, but that's not healthy for the tzmachim. It could ruin the tzemach because it's coming down in torrents. Or the rains were perfect; they were roi for both tzmachim and ilonos, but not for shsia. Now the cisterns were not filling up with water for drinking. In all those cases, masriyan alim. So the Gemara says, Bichlema, I understand very well it's machim v'lo b'ina mishkachas la the asa nicha v'lo asa razia. So it was good for the tzmachim because it was coming down gently, but it wasn't hard torrents of rain. And that I can understand. Also, I can understand like Elam v'lo tzmachim, the asya razia came down as torrents. V'lo asya nicha didn't come gently. So these rains are very helpful and beneficial for the lonos, for the trees, but they're not good for the growth of the crops. But, and I can understand lazeh, right? That there are no rains at all. In all these cases, Masriyan. But one thing I don't understand, says the Gemara, Avalola boros, velola sichirim oros. Mishkachas yodiasya razia v'nicha. Okay, fine. You know, there's rain coming down in torrents and there's rain coming down gently, but there's not enough of a quantity of rain. Miyutuva lo asya, so the reservoirs did not fill up. But there's one part that I just can't figure out. Yardu leboro sichavoris avalola zevalola zeh. There was enough rain to fill up the cisterns, and not enough rain for the lanos and the tzmachim. What could that be? And the Gemara answers the asya b'shfichusa. This was a torrential downpour. This was much more severe than even the hard rains that come down for the trees. And it was great for the water supply for drinking, but the lanos and the tzmachim will not produce. Tan Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa, Masriyin umisanim al haylanos beprosa pesach. And that means that, according to Rashi elsewhere, not here, it's Chameshes Yomim Kodem al Pesach, 15 days before Pesach. That's on the 29th of Adar. And in Eretz Yisrael, the trees blossom around Pesach time. And there's not enough rain for the trees to blossom. And therefore, if we had a dry winter, and now the trees are not producing their fruit, they need rains now. And if 15 days before Pesach, the rains are not coming down, then that's already a Zman Hasra. That's already a Tzara. He says in the footnote here, Hagshamim mo'ilim lehem kfar mishas revir rishon. Okay, so in one case, the rains came down in Revir Rishon, and that was sufficient. But the brisa that we're studying now is a case where afilu b'Revir Rishon yardu g'shamru yum leilanos, but shegia prosa pesach im trichel leviach cheres kedei lifra. In other words, the original rains are not sufficient to generate the pricha of the lanos, and therefore masriyan aleim miyad. Alaboros sichin oros, right? If the water holes, dishes, caves, I call them cisterns anyway, they didn't fill up, then afilu, meaning masriyan afilu bifros achat, even 2 weeks before Chag HaSukkos, okay, there's a whole discussion here about how you count those 15 days. Okay, that's not for us today. He says, the im well, according to one Girsal, kulam im lahem mayim lishtos masriyan aleim miyad. And that means even earlier than 2 weeks before Pesach, before Sukkot, meaning even during the summer months. And you might think it's a tefillah shah, but no, we're in such a desperate situation that we have to beg for rain even during the summer months. The Ezra miyad shalahem. And at what point do we have to begin fasting and being masriya? What day of the week should we start with? Sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. We have to wait for Monday, because you remember the Shelo Yafkius Hashar, the whole discussion we had about the first Taanit, if they would go through it on a Thursday. Now the Brisa gives us another example of Hasra of Al Kulam, Ein Masriyan Alele Ele B'Farchya Shalahem. In other words, if there's a tzara in the entire nation, there's not enough water, then in that nation, within that malchus, that's kingship, we will start the whole process of Masriya. Now we have a tzara that is very, very dangerous called askara. Askara is a contagious disease, and it affects the throat. It contracts, constricts breathing, very dangerous and very contagious. And if people are dying from askara, like for example, the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva that died from askara, Bizman Sheish Misa is then Masriyan Oleh immediately. We go out and we cry and we pray and we supplicate with full blast. Bizman Sheish Misa ain't Masriyan Oleh. Apparently, it's not dangerous. Masriyan al ha-gavai. Gavai is a min arba. It's a kind of a locust that attacks the tvua. B'cholshu. Even if we only saw a very limited amount of locust, we have to start hasra, because we know that if a limited amount of locust came, then yavo od rabim mehem acherim. They bring all their friends along, and they're going to completely consume the tvua. Then we have something called chagav, which is a kind of a grasshopper, and ein masriyan aleya. Rav Shimon Elazar omer af al hachagav masriyan. In other words, Rav Shimon Elazar is of the opinion that even a small amount of chagav is a sign of danger. and it's included on the Maka Malechus. Shemasrin alav b'chol makom. Now we have another brayso about the tsaros. If there's a lack of water, Tana Rabbanan Masrin al ha'ilanos. If there's not enough rain for the trees to produce their fruit, but that's only b'shar shnei hashavua, the other 6 years, not today, not this year, because this is a year of Shemitah, and all the fruits of the lanos are hefker, and although the aniyim could eat the fruits, but we're not going to cry out because of the aniyim. However, alaboros, alashichin, alamaoros, if you're talking about caves and ditches and water holes that haven't filled up, then masriyan afil b'shviyas, because we are desperate for water for drinking, even during shviyas. Now, with regard to the ilanos, we said in the Tanakama's view that on Shemitah we're not masriyan because the fruits are hefker in any event. Rav Shimon Gamliel disagrees. Afal ilanos b'shviyas, we will be masriyim. It's a tzara gedola, even during shviyas, if the ilanos are not producing. It's not of any interest to Rav Shimon Gamliel whether he owns the paris of the ilan during 6 out of the 7 years of Shemitah, or whether it's hefker during the Shemitah year. In any event, the aniyim will need those fruits in order to survive, and therefore masriyim. Tanya idach, we have a different transmission of the shita of Rav Shimon Gamliel in a different brayso. Masriyan al ilonos b'shar shnei shavua, right? Other years, but not on Shemitah. The alaboros al shichin v'alamaoros afil b'shviyas. Oh, now we get the opinion of Rav Shimon Gamliel. Af al hailonos masriyim, even on shviyas. But if there's not rain for tzmachim, enough rain for tzmachim, right, the gentle rains, then up until this point, we're about to offer a second transmission of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. But until this point, we're only going to be masriyan for the peros ilam, but not for the tzmachim. And now, according to the second transmission, afal asfichin, right? So sfichin are like vegetables and so forth that grew because there were seeds in the ground during shishis during the 6th year, and they grew automatically without any avodas hasada during the 7th year. Parnasa laniyim, because the sfichin are hefker, they're ownerless, and the aniyim will support themselves and eat these sfichim. And even though they're not as chashuv as the peros elon, but nevertheless masriyan alayim, because they are machal haroy laniyim. Tanya, we learned in a brayso on Rabbi Elazar ben Pirota. Miyom shechar beis hamikdash nasu geshamim tzimukim laolam. Tzimukim are shriveled up. It's rain is not reliable after the churban. Yeshanik shal merubim. Although in 1 year we see that the rains are falling, however, that doesn't say anything because Yeshanik the next year it might be that there's not enough rain. The rains are sparse. They fall in the proper time. They don't fall in the proper time. If the rains fall in the proper time, if the master pays his eved a salary on Sunday, he's got the entire week to bake his dough for Shabbos, and he'll do a good job. Tchina, lisha, everything, the whole 9 yards. Nimtes itza nefes kitikuna v'nechels kitikuna. However, shana she'en gishmei yordim bismanam lemau dome. If the rains are not falling in the proper time, to what is it similar to? The eved shenasal arab parnasos be'erev Shabbos on Friday. He gives a check, a salary check to his employee, and it's not enough time to bake his bread properly. Nimtzeis isa nefesh below shalo kitikuna. It's not baked properly. Necheles shalo kitikuna. And if he can't eat it properly, it's not a good bread. It's not a good challah. And also, if the rains don't fall at the proper time, then the rains have to fall at a certain time so the crops will produce and ripen properly. If you have a year where there's ample rain, it's his master gave him a salary check that could last him for the entire year, all at once. And here too, if the rains fell properly, then he can grind up his wheat and have enough flour to take him through the whole year. Nimtzu rechaim tochenos min hakur mashetochenos min hakav. So we're talking about rechaim, which are millstones, and they grind from one kur the same amount that they grind from a kav. In other words, the loss sustained in the grinding is kept to a minimum, since that loss is the same regardless of the quantity that he grinds. The kneading of the dough consumes as much from a core as it consumes from a kav, so the loss sustained in kneading is the same regardless of the quantity needed. And similarly, the amount of rain absorbed by rocky soil is the same whether rainfall is heavy or light. Shana shegishameh mu'atim lemau domef. There's very little rain. Lievich shenosan l'rabba parnoso ma'at ma'at. He gives him, small amounts of money, a little at a time. Nimtzu rechaim, in the nimshal, his millstones. Asher tochenos min hakur tochenos min hakav. What the millstones would grind from a core, they grind from a kav. In other words, the single loss that would have resulted from grinding the entire core at once is multiplied by the number of separate grindings that are performed instead. Nimtzeis isa, as a result, the same amount of dough that is consumed from a core by the kneading, it consumes from a kav, i.e., the single loss that would have resulted from kneading the entire core at once is multiplied by the number of separate kneadings that are performed instead. So when the yearly allotment of rain is spread out over several sparse rainfalls, less water reaches the productive soil. At a time when the year's rains are abundant, what can it be compared to the person who needs clay? He's got a lot of water. The water is not used up, and the clay is kneaded properly. But he has only a little amount of water. The water is used up before he finishes kneading, and the clay is not kneaded properly. Rabbanon. Pamachas olu Yisrael regel Yushalayim v'lo hoyelem mayim lishtos. Holach Nagdimon ben Gurion etzel Adon echad. Now, Nagdimon was a wealthy person. He went to a Gentile, and the story took place at the end of Bayit Sheni, when Romans wielded great power in Israel. Amalo halveni shtemesrei mainos mayim le'ola regolim. He said to him, meaning Nagdimin, lend me 12 wells of water for the purpose of the Ole Regel. I will give you back 12 wells of water. The wells were drying out and required rainwater to replenish them. He was hoping that it would rain so that he would be able to repay the water. He asked for 12 wells to invoke the merit of the 12 tribes of Israel to help him repay the loan. If I don't repay the loan, kikar kesef. So I'll give you 12 kikar kesef. Kavalo zman. Even shegia zman v'lo yardu geshavim b'shachris sholach lo. This guy, this Adon Echad, we don't know who he was, sent a message that morning to Nakdimon, Shagarli o mayim o mos sheyeshli biyodcha. Either give me the water or give me the money that you owe me. Sholach lo. Nakdimon sent back to him the message. Adayin yeshli zman. Kol hayom kulo shalir. I have the entire day to pay back the water. The loan is not due till the end of the day. B'torayim sholach lo shagarli omayim omo sheyeshli biyodcha sholach lo adayin yeshli shahus biyom b'mincha sholach lo late in the afternoon shagarli mayim omo sheyeshli biyodcha sholach lo adayin yeshli shahus biyom liglel olav oso adon. So that Adon laughed at him. Amar, and he declares, Kol hashanaku lo yardu geshavim. The entire year there hasn't been geshavim, no rains have fallen. Here on the top of Chav. The Akshav Yerdu Gishamim, and now he expects the rain is going to fall before the end of the day. Nichnas Beis HaMerkas B'Simcha. He goes to take a bath, and he's quite confident that Nakdima would pay him a huge, huge sum of money. Ad Shadon Nichnas B'Simchas Beis HaMerkas, while the Adon enters into the bathhouse in a state of Simcha, Nakdima nichnas beis hamikdash kshu atzev. Nakdima enters the temple of Israel in a downcast mood. He wraps himself up and stands in prayer. I didn't do this for my own personal glory. I undertook to provide water for the Ole Regel, Lolifod base Abba Sisi, not for the honor of my father's house, Elifod Chasisi, Shiumayim Mitsuyim Li Ole Regolim. So the Ole Regolim would have access to water. Miyad Niskashu Shamayim B'Oven. The skies became overcast with clouds. The Yardu Gishamad Shidismalu Chteimisrei Mayiros Mayim Vehosiru. The rain fell until the 12 waters, the wells that he had borrowed from this Adon, filled with water to the level that they held when Nakdiman had borrowed them, and even beyond. Now the Adon goes out of the bathhouse. Nakdim Ben-Gurion Yotza Beis HaMikdash, and Ben Nakdim Ben-Gurion goes out of the temple. Shepagu Zebazeh Omar Lo. Nakdiman said to him, Tainli Dmei Mayim Yotzer Sheyeshli Biyado. I gave you a surplus of water, you should pay for that. The wells now contain more waters than had been borrowed. Nakdiman demanded payment for the surplus. That wasn't part of the original agreement. He was really sort of replying in kind, to the Adon's making fun of him before. Amar the Adon says to him, I acknowledge that the Holy One didn't agitate his world, sending a drought-ending rainstorm so late in the season, except on your account. So in Eretz Yisrael, the rains fall only in the winter. Only when the rainy season passes, the rains are not to be expected until the following year, since most of the season had passed without any break in the drought. The sudden arrival of a heavy rainstorm was out of the ordinary. El Adayin Yeshli Pischon Per Olech. I still have an argument against it. Sha'otzi Mimcha Esmo Osai, in order to collect my money from you. Shekvar Shka Chama. The sun set before the rains fell. So the rains fell past the deadline in my possession. And now Nakdima goes back into the temple. Hoda Sheyesh lecha ahuvim bi'olamecha. Make it known in the world, publicize it, that you have your beloved ones in the universe. Miyad nispazru ha'ovim, zarcha chama. The sun came out again. At that moment, the Adon said to him, Ilu lo nikdira hachama. Had the sun not pierced through the clouds, I would have a claim and argument against you, but now that the sun came out again, there's nothing that I can clear. And Tana, we learned in a Brisa, lo nakdimon shmo ela buni shmo. His name was Buni v'lam nikrit shmo nakdimon sheniktara chama ba'avuro. Because the sun pierced through the clouds on his behalf. The wells were given to Nakdima for the period of the loan. Any water flowing into them during that period legally belonged to Nakdima. Once the deadline for repayment had passed, the wells automatically reverted to their owner, so the rain which fell and filled the walls then belonged to him. Thus, Nakdima could not repay his debt with those waters. Beautiful, I got it. We'll stop here, and I wish you a great day.